about to listen to the Dr. Daliah Show. Sassy, stimulating medical talk radio. Any medical advice Dr. Daliah Wax gives on her show should not be substituted for an actual visit to your medical provider. And now, here's Dr. Daliah.
On the Dr. Daliah Show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877-Dr. Dali, 1-877-DOCDALI. So I hope all of you had a good holiday weekend. Memorial Day is obviously more about mattresses, more than mattresses and barbecues. It was honoring those who have fallen, but it is still a 3-day weekend, and I think many people did enjoy the sun, got some activity, spent time with their families, which is fine. I think it's important to do that while you are also remembering and honoring those that have fallen. Which kind of has begged the question people ask: should Memorial Day then not be attached? You know how the Uniform Holiday Act by Lyndon B. Johnson made, all these days, 3-day weekends to let federal workers have 3-day weekends. Memorial Day, when people say Happy Memorial Day, that makes people cringe, because Memorial Day is not a day of celebration and barbecue. It's a day where you're honoring those that have fallen and remembering, and going to services and saying, the pledge and visiting graves and, just honoring those that have fallen. But it is a 3-day weekend, based on the laws. And so many of you were out there in the sun. And I had patients call up with some pretty bad sunburns. We are talking, they fried out in the sun. And either the sun is getting stronger or you're taking medications that might be making you more vulnerable. You're also getting older every year. So you're going to sunburn differently. You might be able to say, you know what? I've been out in the sun. I only had to apply it in the morning, the sunscreen, and I was good all day. Okay, if you're 20 years older, that's different. You're going to burn much differently when you're older. So keep that in mind. In fact, Newsweek is saying that millions of California residents are being warned to avoid the sun the next few days. Temperatures are expected to surpass 100 degrees in multiple regions. I came back from Boston and Maine, where we were freezing and bundling up, and I was on top of Cadillac Mountain in Acadia National Park, where it was 30-some degrees, to coming back home to Las Vegas, where it was about 100. And it's hot in the Southwest. I really miss being back east and on the eastern seaboard. But in California, residents are being warned to avoid sun exposure, avoid this extreme heat wave as much as possible, as the National Weather Service has issued extreme heat watches and advisories for Central Valley, Sacramento Valley, Sierra Foothills, and other inland areas. Las Vegas, Death Valley also being told to be aware. And, our heat affects us in different ways, but I wanted to open and talk about these sunburns. UV rays such as UVB can burn the skin. And, it could be as caustic as dropping hot water on you. Some of us are blistering. Some of us, our skin is turning black. This one sunburn, he was black all along his necklace line. He was wearing a silver necklace, so we think that might have accentuated the sun and conducted the heat differently. And then his whole back peeling and red. And he's like, I'm feeling pins and needles. Well, you're feeling pins and needles because this isn't a typical, stage 1 burn. This is possibly partial thickness or 2nd degree, maybe even 3rd degree in some areas, because you baked in the sun. And so severe sunburns could cause blistering, pain. You dehydrate because it's killing the skin, and the skin's number one job is to keep moisture in. You could get infection, headache, nausea, fever. And so, severe sunburns are often treated by burn care units. They won't turn you away if you have a severe sunburn because it's still a burn. It doesn't always have to be scalding hot water. And then they would treat you by removing the dead skin. It's interesting. I've had patients where they'll burn themselves and they won't go in and get it treated. And then their wound opens up and they're not healing and it's red and oozing and getting infected. So they're like, well, just give me antibiotics. online. And I'm like, we do burn care. Burn care it's a whole specialty because you kill the skin in the burn. And so one of the reasons why you peel with a more superficial sunburn is your body will slough off the dead skin, and then hopefully the new skin will grow. But when you have very severely damaged skin that your body can't slough off, then it sits there and interferes with healthy skin, and then it festers. So burn care will debride the non-healthy skin. And sometimes the skin dies off days after the burn. So when people say, well, I'm fine because it was superficial, or I'm fine because I took some antibiotics, if you're not removing the bad skin, you know how many of you have hurt a nail and it started to detach, but you let it go, and then your toe festers. If that nail is not a healthy nail and it's not attached correctly, you're not going to get new nail growth. And yes, you can get an infection. So they address that. They want to make sure new skin grows as quickly as possible. They want to make sure you're not dehydrated. They want to control the pain, and they want to make sure you don't have an infection. Now, some of you are out in the sun and you don't realize that there are a lot of medications that can make you more vulnerable. Antibiotics. If you're on an antibiotic or an antifungal, let's say you have toenail fungus and you're on an antifungal for the next 3 months, you want to be careful being out in the sun because you could be more sensitive. If you're taking antihistamines because of allergies, that could make you more sun sensitive. If you're taking a statin to lower cholesterol, if you're on a diuretic for congestive heart failure or for fluid overload, your birth control can make you more sun sensitive. Anti-inflammatories like ibuprofen, diabetic medications such as your sulfonylureas, your glipizide, glyburide. If you're taking tretinoin or retinoids for your skin, that as well. So to prevent sunburn, I like to wear, these water shirts, hats, sunglasses, sunscreen. You need to reapply every hour or more if you're swimming. We'll talk about sunscreen later on this month, but we take for granted the sun because we remember we have our own ideas of how we could tolerate it in the past. You cannot use the past to base what you're doing now. I can't tell you how many people will go on a roller coaster and say, well, I've always been fine on roller coasters. Now I'm getting dizzy. Well, because you're older. You're different. You're on different medication. So be careful out there. 1-877-DOC-DALIAH. Dr. Daliah here. Are you tired, burned out, gaining weight, succumbing to the daily pressures of life? Well, how's your dopamine doing? How you feel right now, how you'll feel an hour from now, and how you'll feel next week is completely reliant on your dopamine. Our daily motivation and willingness to push through challenges depends on the intricate chemical process dopamine provides. Christian Kalikas and I created Deploying Dopamine, a book that tells you what dopamine is, when it dysfunctions, and how to successfully deploy it when needed. Find Deploying Dopamine on Amazon today. Check it out.
At Hotshot Secret, we share the science behind common diesel problems and their solutions. For example,
Hotshot Secret Stiction Eliminator.
Stiction, that sticky friction, undermines the performance of diesel engines. Third-party ASTM testing verifies that Stiction Eliminator removes 2 times as much stiction than any alternative on the retail shelf. Stiction Eliminator is formulated to be left in the engine oil. It works as you drive.
Available at truck stops, Tractor Supply, O'Reilly's Auto Parts, and online at HotShotSecret.com. Hotshot Secret. Powered by science.
In a study, it was found that 33% of 44 herbal supplements had no trace of the advertised herb. Don't let that happen to you. Hi, this is Dr. Mitch. If you want to ensure quality, please go to TotalWellness.com. Supplements made for physicians, only now available to you too. TotalWellness.com, helping you to look good, feel good, and enjoy total wellness.
Carl Amari here to tell you about our newest website for old-time radio lovers. It's 100radioshows.com. At this site, there are 5 old-time radio shows waiting for you to download free as our gift to you, and be sure to browse the additional 700 old-time radio shows available to you for 70% off by using the promo code RADIO at checkout. This is a limited-time offer, so log on to 100radioshows.com. That's 100radioshows.com.
We are back on the Dr. Daliah Show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877 Dr. Daliah, 1-877 DOCDALI. Big thanks to Talk Media Network for making the show happen. Big thanks to Daniel, our producer, and big thanks to you all for tuning in. We really do appreciate it. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter or X at Dr. Daliah, Facebook, The Dr. Daliah Show, and on YouTube, click like and subscribe. So Mary Lou Retton, she was a little bit before my time, but she was an iconic trailblazer in the Olympics. I think it was the 84 games in Los Angeles, where she had a perfect score of 10. I think becoming the first American in history to win a women's individual all-around, way before the Simone Biles era. And Mary Lou Retton, just America's favorite gymnast for decades, apparently has been arrested on a DUI charge in West Virginia. According to court documents, she was arrested 10 days ago on one count of driving under the influence of alcohol, controlled substances, or drugs. And I guess she issued a $1,500 bond. She had been hospitalized about a year ago with severe pneumonia. And we don't have a lot of details, but I think it was October of 2023. She was hospitalized. There was a spot fund or GoFundMe page because even though you were an Olympian in the 1980s, the endorsements later dry up. Not sure what sort of funds she was able to still have later on into her middle age life and career. But she fought for her life. She overcame. But unfortunately, she has now been arrested. And so when you see things like this happen, and I just had a friend arrested for a DUI in Florida, it highlights a bigger problem that we have. One is there's a lot of people drinking alcohol or under controlled substances or drugs, which, by the way, if you're driving under the influence of a medication that makes you sleepy, like a severe antihistamine, that could also constitute DUI, depending on the state. But Mary Lou Retton, only 57, arrested on suspicion of impaired driving and driving under the influence, suggests a lot could be going on, and not just with her. One is many people using alcohol. Two, many people struggling with addictive behavior. But three, a lot of people might not realize that they are under the influence. And so you would think anybody driving under the influence would be obvious and would get caught and pulled over. There's not enough cops. There's not enough ability to traffic stop. When I was lecturing to some high school students, and one of the kids said, I don't know what to do. My parents smoke pot while driving me to school, and I can't stand smelling it or smelling of it. So I immediately looked to the teacher, because this is something that we want to help this child with. And so she doesn't get exposed and she is driven safely. The teacher said she was going to handle it and talk to the principal. But this isn't just about alcohol. Marijuana. I mean, there are people driving under the influence all the time. And it's when somebody slumps over and falls asleep, or when somebody gets into an accident, or if a cop is at the right place at the right time. And that's frightening. We don't talk a lot about MAD, Mothers Against Drunk Drivers, and drunk driving as much as we should, because there's so many other issues going on. But it's still a very, very common threat. And it's homemakers. It's moms, grandmas. These are, it is, people think the drunk driving are the kids that are partying it up and doing stupid. And you have to understand that some of the biggest culprits could be your next door neighbor who uses alcohol to cope. And alcoholism affects millions. We don't want to think that, but having a good friend of mine die from alcoholism, putting herself in liver failure, and another good friend of mine's wife died of the exact same thing. These are moms homemakers. So why the attraction to alcohol? Well, it's going up. Alcohol use is going up because since COVID, it's harder to see a doctor. So for those individuals who were being evaluated for depression or evaluated for anxiety, they haven't seen a doctor in years. They're just using online to get whatever treatment they need. Number two is it's hard to get a prescription. So if they did take an antidepressant or something for anxiety or sleep, they can't get it anymore because they're not being seen by a provider. So they're going to their liquor cabinet, which most people don't have a liquor cabinet anymore. I remember my parents having a liquor cabinet. It was, maybe 1 or 2 bottles because they weren't drinkers. And that sucker was like locked up. I'm like, I don't drink, please. Trust me. I think it was Manischewitz wine, which, by the way, tastes really yummy, but it's very sweet. So they'll use alcohol to cope. Well, once their body gets used to it and 1 drink doesn't cut it, they go to 2 drinks. And there's a lot of individuals who don't realize that they're consuming a lot of alcohol. Maybe you're at work, you go to happy hour, you have some alcohol. Now you need to run home, cook dinner. You're cooking with some wine. So while the wine is open, you're also having a glass while you cook. Then at dinner time, you're serving dinner and you'll, open up another bottle for dinner. Then, you got to finish the bottle. So while you're watching Netflix, you guys are enjoying a drink. More than 1 drink a day for a woman is considered moderate drinking. The more than 1 to more excessive. Just 1 drink. And there's people having at least 4. And we're talking small 5-ounce glasses count as a drink. 1 shot as a drink. The average wine goblet is much bigger. It's like a little fishbowl. So people are consuming more alcohol than they realize. Men, it's more than 2 drinks in a day. I mean, you're watching a hockey game. You're easy, or football or Super Bowl. You're easily overcoming that. And so I think more people drink more than they realize. Now, whether you're Mary Lou Retton, whether you're any of the homemaker friends I have, it's not easy. And how do you identify it? See, the funny thing is I didn't know. Most of my friends are guys, so it's very easy for me to pick up a change in their behavior. But, with most of my women friends, I see them rarely, when I do. I might communicate with them more, but I don't necessarily see them in person as much. And so, if you don't pick up on it, then, you don't know. And people will hide it. They'll hide it well. Because rather than looking drunk, they look normal. If they're not feeling well and in bed, they're going through withdrawal. Then they'll drink something to take the pain away and then be able to talk and converse. And so they think they're functioning, but they're still under the influence. They still have a high alcohol content. And they're still not functioning at their best because they're only functioning when they have alcohol. So if at all you suspected, you need to get them help. Alcoholics Anonymous is fantastic. Their doctor, their medical provider could help. The big problem we have is most people don't have a doctor. When people are calling it to telemedicine, and I'm like, did you talk to your doctor about this? They go, what doctor? I don't have one. You used to go to your medical provider. People don't have one anymore. And they don't feel like they could walk into an urgent care saying, hi, I drink alcohol, I need help. Now, urgent care can help. They can. Don't think they can't. They could do referrals. They could help you with treatment. But they're limited because they're not your regular provider. So you need to go with them, or you need to talk to their family, or you need to get them the help they need. And AA meetings are fun. I think you're able to go to the AA meeting even if you don't drink. In medical school, they made us all go, not because we were drinking, because they wanted us to see what AA is about. And we loved it. And we wanted to keep going because we're like, wow, I love sharing. I love hearing what other people are going through. It makes my life seem less bad. And, it was just really positive. So positive. Maybe offer to go with them. Offer to be there for them. If they don't have a doctor, maybe your doctor will see them. But it's a shame to see people struggle. And there's a lot of people out there struggling. And for those of you who are like, you know what? Maybe I do need to cut back a little bit. Just look at what you're drinking. Look at what you're taking in. And I know people are like, well, I don't want to say I have a problem. You don't have to use the word problem. I know admitting there's an issue is the first step, especially with AA. But, if you think there are ways you could, if you don't have to drink while you cook, if you don't have to have wine with dinner, that's a huge step in the right direction. But never, ever drive while intoxicated. 1-877-DOC-DALIAH.
At Hot Shot Secret, we share the science behind common diesel problems and their solutions. For example,
Diesel fuel cetane levels.
in many states, the cetane rating in diesel fuel is 42 to 45. Most diesel engines operate more efficiently with a cetane rating of 48 to 50. One treatment of Hot Shot Secret Diesel Extreme will raise your cetane 7 points, increase fuel economy, and improve cold starts. Due to a cleaner burn, there are less hydrocarbons and particulate matter in your exhaust. This reduces the blockage of your diesel particulate filter. Using Diesel Extreme generates 83% less DPF regeneration. The 6-in-1 Diesel Extreme formula also includes the most concentrated detergent on the market, lubricity enhancer, water demulsifier, rust and corrosion inhibitors, and a fuel stabilizer.
Hot Shot Secret Diesel Extreme is available nationwide at truck stops, fine farm and auto stores, and online at hotshotsecret.com. Hot Shot Secret, powered by science.
We are back on the Dr. Daliah Show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877-DOC-DALIAH, 1-877-DOC-DALI. So over the weekend, I worked a lot. I saw patients online and did a lot of reports. I always work on the weekends, just in the holidays. It just, for me, is easier. I watched the graduation speech that Trump did to the cadets at West Point. And it was really interesting, some of the advice he gave. You almost got a glimpse of Grandpa Trump. Because I bet he had similar conversations with his kids and with his grandkids. And it was very interesting. Now, I don't know if I've followed his other graduation speeches. I think this is the first one I've seen of his. But it was really, really interesting, what he was saying. And so, and he honored them. He said instead of stock options, you chose to honor and sacrifice. Instead of business suits and dress shoes, you chose muddy boots and fatigues. You kept yourselves in shape. He was, really positive, and it was greeted with a lot of applause. And it was, really exciting to be spoken to, obviously, by the president. And he did get political, but he gave them some really, really honest advice. And one is you have to love what you do. Trump looks like he's one of the hardest working presidents out there. Every flipping day. He looks like he's working or he's doing something. He's talking to the media. Memorial Day was really busy for him. Busy for all presidents because they go to the Tomb of the Fallen Soldier, but also, making speeches and being there for military, etc. But, he said he loves working. He gets up, and I'm like that too. I love what I do. I love helping patients. I love teaching. I love radio. I love students. I love research. I love my kids. I love what I do. Now, you can't love everything you do, but you're not going to be successful if you aren't doing something you love. Now, some people say, well, I love drinking. You got to come up with something else. You could love more than 2, 3, or 3 things, okay? But, many of us struggle with what we love doesn't pay the bills. I love radio. I love broadcasting. I love entertaining. It doesn't pay the bills, but that's okay. Because I have then, my telemedicine job. I'll see patients on telemedicine so I could still do what I love. But I have to every day love what I do. I jump out of bed every morning. It is rare where I'm like, let me just snooze and hit the snooze button. I can't wait. There are so many things I want. Now, yes, there are a lot of things I have to do, but I'm driven. And then he also talked about to not lose your momentum. So he talked about this real estate mogul, William Levitt. And this is a story that my guess is he shares with his kids and grandkids. And he talks about how William Levitt was at the top of his game. He had a company. And then he was an American real estate developer, one of the top, very, very wealthy. And he sold his business. He divorced, and then Trump said he married a trophy wife. And he found a new wife. He said it didn't work out too well. And so I didn't really follow the whole trophy wife part stuff he was talking about, and that's what the media's concentrating on. But I followed the story, he said, where he basically had all this money and he sold a successful business and he decided to go and enjoy, a new wife, enjoy his money, travel. But then I think it was 15 years later, the company said, this isn't for us. We want to sell it back to you. And we want to sell it back to you for pennies on the dollar. So he buys it, repurchases the former company, but then it ultimately goes bankrupt. And he said that Levitt told him when he met him at a party that he lost his momentum. I used to have it, but I lost it. So Trump shares with the crowd and the cadets to not lose your momentum. And that's pretty important for him. He was really worried, I think Trump, from a personal standpoint, that he could lose his momentum not winning that presidency, the second term. But he has time and time again in speeches talked about how it was a blessing in disguise because he worked to get the Olympics. He worked to get the World Cup in his first term and was kind of sad that he wouldn't get to be there if he won his second term because it would be past his 8 years in office. But because his second term is now, he gets to be there for the World Cup, who he brought. He gets to be there for the Olympics in LA, and the bicentennial or the 250th birth of our nation. So it worked out for him. So for him, he kept his momentum. Not that he alluded to that as much, in this, but the lesson I got from this is you might be successful in the past with something. Take a break. And then go back using 15-year-old protocols. And now it doesn't work. I don't know much about Levitt. And I think William Jared Levitt, he died in 1994. I think he was president of Levitt & Sons. He revolutionized post-World War II housing, made affordable, mass-produced homes, etc. And, leaving a business and then going back 15 years later, thinking you can now redo. There are some people where they have the Midas touch. Anything they touch will turn to gold. But you have to understand that things are different. Medicine is different. People ask Daliah, will you go back and open up your practice? Because I left my practice during Obamacare to go and teach and then do radio full time. No, I won't. Because the way I knew how to run, and I was successful until Obamacare. Once the high deductibles came and people weren't paying bills and money wasn't coming in, you can only do so much because you got to pay for staff. And I'm not going to automate and robot everything. I know how to run an office 2010, 2004 style. In 2025, that's a whole different game. Maybe I would be successful. Maybe I wouldn't. But to see somebody who knew what they were doing, had the Midas touch, sells the business, wants to get back in it, and then goes bankrupt, kind of reminds us that, times change, sometimes faster. And if you don't keep up with the times, you're a dinosaur and you become extinct. And it was really interesting, the advice he was giving. And he gave a lot of advice to the cadets. It was a really long speech. And he honored, cadet. He recognized Ricky McMahon. Ricky McMahon was a little boy when his dad, Lieutenant Colonel Michael McMahon, died in Afghanistan. And then he recognized Chris Vertigo. He completed, I guess, a march in 2 hours and 30 minutes flat. It was an 18.5 mile. He smashed the international record by 13 minutes. He honored the lacrosse team captain, and it was a really, really nice graduation. But there was a lot of good advice that he gave. And so, people always say, if you want to be successful, look at what the successful people do. Now, I think a lot of successful people are scam artists, and I think some of them aren't ethical, but some of the successful ethical ones, listen. But he gave it was, he was not wrong in some of the things he was saying. And so, I hope people listened and learned. 1-877 Doc Daliah, don't go away. Guys, Dr. Daliah here. Addictions can sneak up on us and come in many forms, whether it's drugs, alcohol, sex, video games, porn, or something less obvious such as food, internet, or shopping. Addiction can seem innocent at first and then evolve into an insurmountable evil. In our book, Addiction Basics, Caitlin Kalikas and I dive into the common addictions and provide tips for identifying and preventing these before they sneak in and take over our lives. Addiction Basics can be found on Amazon or my website, drdaliah.com. Check it out.
At Hot Shot Secret, we share the science behind common diesel problems. For example,
Diesel fuel cetane levels.
the cetane rating in diesel fuel is 42 to 45. Most diesel engines operate more efficiently with a cetane rating of 48 to 50. One treatment of Hot Shot Secret Diesel Extreme will raise your cetane 7 points, increase fuel economy, and improve cold starts.
Hot Shot Secret Diesel Extreme is available nationwide at truck stops, fine farm and auto stores, and online at hotshotsecret.com. Hot Shot Secret, powered by science.
At Hot Shot Secret, we share the science behind common diesel problems. For example,
Product claims without proof.
every trucker on the road has heard product claims about an additive that simply didn't match their experience. Proof is found from third-party testing by a recognized, credible source. That's proof. Hot Shot Secret Stiction Eliminator will improve your performance and fuel economy. For proof, we engaged the Ohio State University Center of Automotive Research to conduct an EPA-certified fuel economy test with Stiction Eliminator on a FedEx truck, a 2006 P500 Freightliner with 247,000 miles. The test showed a 3.6% increase in highway driving fuel economy from Stiction Eliminator, an oil additive. The complete report from OSU is available for download at hotshotsecret.com. That's proof.
Hot Shot Secret Stiction Eliminator, available at truck stops, Tractor Supply, O'Reilly's Auto Parts, and online at hotshotsecret.com. Hot Shot Secret, powered by science.
All right. We are back on the Dr. Daliah Show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877 Doc Daliah, 1-877 DOCDALI. So after I posted pictures of me running around the campus of MIT and Harvard last week, and then we found 3 ducks. So me and my sons decided to pose with our new friends, the ducks. We're not the brightest people. I mean, I think we're smart overall, but you have a chance to visit MIT and Harvard, and there's animals sitting there equidistant from each other. I thought that was a cool picture. So for me, I kind of went the artsy look with it. And it's not like you could go into the buildings because, they have secure doors, etc. But some of you reached out asking why I didn't apply to Ivy League. I got a 1450 on my SAT. Some of you saw my grades in school. Why didn't I apply? And why didn't I go? And so I think I've kind of shared this with you. I didn't have the money. And I know you could get student loans, but in the 90s, that scared me. The amount of money I would have to borrow for undergrad. Because back in the 90s, if you borrowed money, you had to pay it back. I understand now they're trying to change the concept of a student loan where you borrow money and you don't have to pay it back. Some president is going to promise to wipe it off. But back in the 90s, I would have to pay that money back. And I didn't have money for college. I went to UNLV because they offered me a full academic scholarship to cover all my classes. I still had to pay for my books and I still had to support myself. That's why I worked multiple part-time jobs. But I didn't have to take loans out for undergrad. Why? Because I knew for medical school, if I was lucky enough to get in, I was going to have to shell out a lot of money. And then when it came time to medical school, I wanted to apply to Stanford and to Harvard. I think Stanford's application was $30 just to apply. I didn't have $30. And my thinking was, now remember, I had no money. I was working part-time. I was working at Jack in the Box. I was tutoring. I was working multiple part-time jobs to support myself. I'm thinking to myself, I'm going to spend $30, and what if they reject me? If I could barely afford the application fee, I have no business trying to hope that I could then get, because then you had to also travel to interview. I didn't have that kind of money. Now, I suppose I could have done the drive to Stanford, but to get back east, I would have needed to pull a few $100s together that I didn't have. Now, somebody else would have said, Daliah, you start getting the student loans early. Now you have the money for your interviews, and then you go, because that's actually what the students do now. When they have to interview for medical schools, they fly all over the country. That's thousands of dollars. I just didn't have that money. So I never did. And then there was just no guarantee that I'm not a big risk taker. If there was a guarantee that I would get in, then that's one thing. But no guarantee. And for me to lose money when I needed to scrape everything together, I had a car with no air conditioning that would not have lasted the 7-hour drive in the snow to get where I needed to go for my interview, because I drove, I think. So I needed to put money together to get a car, get a truck. It was money, to be honest. And I didn't think that my grades were going to be that good enough to secure me that confidence of you spend the money, you'll probably get in. Now it's a lot harder. And one thing that has been frustrating people is these Ivy Leagues are very competitive, and they are a lot more open and accepting to international students. And thousands upon thousands of international students are getting in to Ivy League. We taxpayers are helping subsidize their training, but they're not Americans. And, I like students. I understand many of us are from different countries, and it's, I'm a first generation American. I get that, but Trump is starting to, now that some, you opened up Pandora's box when you started to interfere with Jewish students going to class and starting to vandalize these institutions. Now, Trump has ordered U.S. embassies to halt all student visa applications. Secretary of State Marco Rubio has directed officials to stop scheduling appointments with student visa applicants as they're going to start a social media vetting process. This is according to Politico. Effective immediately in preparation for an expansion of required social media screening and vetting, consular section should not add any additional student or exchange visitor visa appointment capacity until further guidance is issued septal, which we anticipate in the coming days. Now, the Institute of International Education Open Doors data found that in 2023-2024, United States hosted 1.1 million international students. Now, that's a nice thing we're doing, but when American students are being turned down And we taxpayers are paying for these international students. Now, somebody goes, wait a second, can we kind of look at this? And now you're on top of that. Some, not all, some of these students are participating in pro-Hamas protests and not letting Jews go to class or interrupting the class. Well, no. So, yes, the government is going to look at what exactly is happening with our student visas. Now, everybody's saying Trump is waging war on universities. You can word it any way you want, but the one thing about this administration is doing is let's reevaluate the science behind the vaccines. Let's reevaluate autism. Let's reevaluate what we're spending money on. Why are SNAP benefits going to junk food when it should be going to meat, eggs, whole grains? This is the administration and the time for us to kind of reevaluate and see what exactly we're doing. What sort of waste, fraud, and abuse is going on with spending? We've been talking about $200 hammers and $200 toilet seats for decades. Maybe now we stop that. And so Trump wants to know the names and countries and origin of all 7,000 foreign-born students attending Harvard. The president doesn't want to. The president of Harvard doesn't want to do that. Apparently, 31% of students who attend Ivy League are from foreign lands. So 31%, almost a third of that school are non-Americans. Now, people do go to universities all over the world. That's a lot, considering many Americans want to go to that school. So we are subsidizing training. Again, it wouldn't be an issue if federal funds weren't involved. Harvard's supposed to be a private institution. They don't need federal funds then. But if taxpayers are involved, now taxpayers are like, well, wait a second, what are we doing? So we're training somebody from Iran to come here and then go back to Iran. What benefit do we get from our tax dollars training that person here? Even if they're an amazing, visa holder, what benefit are we getting with these tax dollars? And so there's been lawsuits now back and forth. And I'm just confused. And when you see Columbia and Harvard and you see these protests and blatant anti-Semitism screaming from the land to the sea and interrupting students trying to learn, listen, free speech and assembly can happen in the free speech areas that are safe. They're open, camera and media can get to them. But that's not where people want to go. They want to stop students from going to the library. Somebody couldn't get his car keys or his stuff because he went to the bathroom and then they hijacked the library. This is not what we want our tax dollars going to. 1-877-DOC-DALIAH.
Did you know that healthy arteries make a gas? Yes, actually 3 known gases. Hi, I'm Dr. Mitch, and nitric oxide is a gas that's readily made all day long to keep our arteries open by relaxing the blood vessel walls. By doing this, our circulation is increased, bringing blood, oxygen, and nutrients to every part of your body. Both age and poor diet can lead to a loss of this precious gas, and in turn, blood pressure can go up, energy can go down, and you can get tingling in your hands and feet. Well, our product, Ultimate Nitric Oxide, can easily help fix this lack of nitric oxide. Go to TotalWellness.com. That's TotalWellness.com, where we are helping you to look good, feel good, and enjoy total wellness.